I am very new to wild camping, so I decided to do some reading around this subject before heading out on my first wild camp, and thought I would share this information with you all. What is wild camping? Wild camping is setting up camp outside of a campsite or caravan park, generally in very remote locations, and sleeping in a small tent, hammock or bivy bag. It might be that you are doing a multi-day hike and camp in national parks, or a small one-night adventure sleeping in nature. As tempting solitude in the wild may be, wild camping can be daunting, and there is an element of some risk, legal rules, and some rules of conduct that need to be considered before, during, and after. This guide will hopefully give you some insight on how to wild camp legally and safely in the UK. The rules around wild camping in the UK are strict to protect the natural environment and wildlife from damage. Is wild camping legal? The general rule for wild camping is to first check if you can legally camp, or try and obtain permission. It is also of the utmost importance to leave no trace. Before heading out to wild camp, check the rules in the area you plan to camp. The majority of England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, campers have no legal rights, so you must check before you camp or get the landowner's permission. Some sites in Scotland, including Loch Lomond, require campers to get a permit, so do your research before you go. Most land in England is privately owned by landowners. While wild camping isn't banned, the only way to wild camp legally in England is by seeking permission from the landowner. The only place that wild camping was legally permitted in England was in Dartmoor National Park. However, following a legal court case against the national park by Alexander Darwall, a hedge fund manager and landowner of the 4,000-acre Blatchford estate, wild camping is no longer permitted in Dartmoor without seeking the permission of the landowner. Dartmoor National Park Authority has decided to appeal the recent High Court judgment that determined wild camping in the national park is not a legal right. Wild camping is legal in most of Scotland, thanks to the Land Reform Scotland Act 2003. Link is in the description. Under this law, wild campers are allowed to pitch up on most unenclosed land. One exception is Loch Lomond and the Trossachs National Park, which is now subject to wild camping bylaws following overuse and damage to the natural environment. The link for this is in the description. This means that camping is only permitted within campsites or with a camping permit. The wild camping leave no trace guidelines remain vital in Scotland to avoid damaging the natural environment or disturbing local wildlife. It is worth reading up on the Scottish Access Code before you go, and the link to this can also be found in the description. How to go wild camping. It is important to do your research before you set off on a wild camping trip. Plan your walking routes carefully, check the weather conditions, terrain, and ensure you've got all the gear you need to hike and camp safely. Many wild campers opt to camp during multi-treks, pitching up late in the day and continuing along the trail early the next morning. This is only allowed in certain parts of the UK, so check before plotting your route, as you may need to head off the trail to pitch up in a campsite instead. For walking route inspiration, take a look at links to guides in description: Britain's National Trails or Guide to Scotland's Great Trails. Here are a couple of key things to remember each and every time you wild camp. Arrive late and leave early. The golden rule of wild camping: arrive late and leave early, remembering to leave no trace. Plan arriving at your chosen location late in the day to avoid disturbing others, and leave early before other walkers are out and about. The wild camping code: leave no trace. This is the crucial rule of wild camping, and ideally you will create minimum impact on your desired area so it still remains natural and wild. Better still, you should leave the site so no one can tell you've even been there. Litter: this goes without saying, but ensure you collect all your rubbish and take it with you. Walk the site slowly before leaving to check that nothing is missed. Leave the site as you found it, don't leave holes, fire damage, litter, and take care not to damage vegetation. This includes toilet duties, which should be well buried and covered with turf so your waste can biodegrade naturally. Fire: if you are allowed to light a fire, ensure you do so correctly and leave no trace that you were ever there. Many sites don't allow fires, so again do your research. Keep group numbers small. Try to minimize disturbing wildlife by camping in a small group and reduce noise and light where possible. Stay just the one night, and then move on. It is possible to stay more than one night in some areas, but try to limit your stay. Source clean water. Water is heavy to carry, so chances are you will need to camp near a water source. Running water is generally safer than still and is best collected as close to the source as possible. Check immediately upstream for animal carcasses or waste. Use a tried and tested water filter or boil any water before drinking. Find a remote spot, but tell someone where you're going. One of the many joys of wild camping is that it gives access to remote and wild places. Finding a remote spot with a view to enjoy at sunrise will make all the aches and pains of hiking through the wilderness seem worthwhile. However, it is also important to let others know where you're planning to go in case of emergency. It doesn't have to be the exact location, but leaving a rough plan of your route could be vitally important in a rescue situation. If you're staying in a hostel or guest house, let the owner know your plans and when you expect to return. Ensure you've got the correct equipment. The British weather is notoriously changeable, particularly in the mountains, so it is vital that before any outdoor adventure that you pack the right kit to keep you warm, dry, and safe. I do hope you found this information helpful, as I am now much more wiser than I was before I started this. Above all, be safe, have fun and respect nature. Leave no trace.